Welcome to Subramani. This is one of those videos which I want you to watch very carefully, especially for a person trying to live off a portfolio, which means you are in retirement, right? So if you are 50 years of age and retired, or you're 70 years of age and retired, or 65 and retired, it doesn't really matter. Some of these facts don't change. So first of all, you have now reached a stage when you have to understand how to translate your assets to cash flows, right? When you are in the accumulation phase, that is you're trying to accumulate money for a particular target. In this case, we will talk about retirement as a target. All of us are on the same plane, whether you invest in a large cap or a mid cap or any of those things. You're 30, you don't really care what is going to happen because you're going to need this money at 60. Even when you're 55, you don't really worry too much because you know at 60 you're going to get your gratuity, PF, etc., which can be put into some short-term funds which you can use for 5 years. So really the cash flow requirement starts at the age of 65 for most people, and if you're working in some companies which automatically and keep giving you extension from 58 to 65, then your cash flow requirements might start at 67 or 68. So you have a longer runway than others where if they are in MNCs or some other banks, etc., where the retirement age is far more stricter. So some of the topics which you have to remember: first is you do not need too much wealth for retirement. What you need is a retirement cash flow. Concentrate on cash flow, not on the assets. Second, very, very important thing, too many people think that if I have say 5 crores and if I get 8% return on my bank deposits or wherever it comes from, I'll have 40 lakhs of income. I need about 10 lakhs, so I'll have 30 lakhs which I will be able to reinvest. That is not the way to look at how your money should be flowing to you. From wherever you withdraw, you will only withdraw what you need. So if you need 10 lakhs a year, you will withdraw only 80,000 a month. What happens is, because you're withdrawing only 10 lakhs and it has some capital and appreciation coming back, you might end up paying very close to zero tax, right? Another important thing is, if you've got 5-6 crores or 10 crores of investments, don't look at Varishta Bima Yojana and the senior citizen savings scheme. That is meant for people with a much lesser net worth. You don't need to have so many assets. There is no point in having 15 lakhs and some 40 instruments for you, right? It will become for 5 crores. It is too much of a headache administratively, and the gap really is not much. So you might as well create your own cash. I'm a big believer in the bucket theory. So if you are a retired person, let's say you're 60 years of age and you're retired. So we will talk about this person who needs money at the age of 63. Right, so at 60, so you will put your money into 3-4 buckets. First bucket would be, say, 2 to 3 years of expenses would be in bucket number 1, which will be your least volatile bucket. So you will keep withdrawing from that bucket. The next bucket, bucket number 2, would have some volatile assets. You could have even some balance advantage fund, which could be in your second bucket, and there will be a third bucket which is largely equity and maybe some real estate from where you're getting rent. The rent portion is actually bucket number 1, but the asset is in bucket number 3. So if you have this combination where you have some direct equity and you have some equity mutual funds, then the cash flow of dividend is going to come. That is again part of bucket number 1. The cash flow is part of bucket number 1. The asset is in bucket number 3, but that cash flow will come to you. You cannot choose not to get the dividend. So please understand this difference between dividends from a mutual fund, which is your money coming to you, and dividend from a company share, which is the company is deciding when to pay the dividend. You cannot decide when you want the dividend, whereas in case of mutual funds you can withdraw. So please understand, it is always worth converting that cash flow from capital gain, because you will pay less tax than income. Don't worry about income, you have to be worried more about cash flow. So how should the cash flow come? Cash flow should always come in terms of capital gain. So if you have invested in debt funds, let's say you're a 60-year-old, you want cash flow in 3 years later. So all the money which is in debt funds in bucket number 1, you should start withdrawing after 3 years, because after 3 years it becomes long-term capital gain, which means you pay 20% tax with indexation. So effectively you will pay something like 12-13% tax, which is much less than the 30% tax which you will pay if you create a 40 lakh cash flow. Don't create a 40 lakh cash flow. All you need is 10 lakhs. You can defer your tax as much as possible. You don't need to pay tax. See, if you are earning a salary of 50 lakhs or 5 lakhs, whatever, you have to pay a tax on that. But your interest or your dividend income can always be converted into capital gain and you withdraw. So you've created these buckets. From which bucket to withdraw, that's a completely different video. But having done this, what happens is some part of your capital is coming back, therefore you're paying less tax. So this is more tax efficient. I've been telling this to very many people. Not everybody understands, but please make an attempt to hear this video again. Converting your income from a regular income on which you pay the highest tax to capital gain is a very, very simple thing. Right now it is allowed. We don't know when it will be outlawed. Please also understand that when it comes to retirement withdrawal, each person is very, very unique. So if you are a 60-year-old man who has retired and you have a 60-year-old wife who is a doctor who is practicing, she could practice for 10 more years, right? Let's say your wife is 5 years younger to you, she's 55, but she's going to practice for another 15 years. So the cash flow, you should not even be touching your principal now, except to the extent of maybe creating 5 lakhs of income, because that is going to be tax free, or 7 lakhs of income which is going to be tax free, assuming you don't have a pension, because your wife's cash flow will pull you along for the next 15 years. So actually your principal requirement or your need to withdraw from your account starts only at the age of 70, not at the age of 63, right? It's also very important that if you are earning well, your son and daughter are earning well, but your wife doesn't have much of capital, it's a fantastic time to be creating capital for her. Let's say you're just 52 years of age and you were planning for your cash flow from 63. Best is asking your children to give money to the mother, which can be as much as they want. Make sure that you're not violating capital gains, the gift tax. Make sure that the children transfer some money to the mother, and the mother can start investing even in bank deposits, etc., because she does not have any taxable income. So up to 5 lakhs she can do that, or she can also go and start putting money in mutual funds and convert that also into capital gain. You don't need to overdo it, because assuming that you have a HUF, that you are an individual and you have a wife, so between the three of you, 21 lakhs of income is going to be tax free. Believe me, 2 lakhs per month, not too many people would be spending that. Many people would be spending much less than that. You will require this money at a much later stage, maybe 20 years later. But right now you're going to have enough tax-free income. So understand that that clubbing provision, getting money transferred from you to your wife through your children, or through your parent, right? Getting your mother or father to make a will, giving more money away to your wife rather than to you. All these things can help optimize taxation and optimize cash flow and optimize capital gains. It's a very complicated thing. Not too many MFDs, not too many chartered accountants understand it. So please understand it. Talk to them. If your MFD understands all this, great. If he doesn't understand, sit with the chartered accountant, ask him or her, and then execute it. Believe me, not too many chartered accountants also have. Also remember, not too many chartered accountants are able to implement this, because chartered accountants do not consider this conversion of current income to capital gain as a very smart thing to do. Many of them don't know that, many of them don't do it. So you sit down, you learn, you sit with them, and or if your MFD himself knows all this, great, but not too many MFDs also would know this. Also remember that don't get too much of nonsense into your head. Stop reading. If you don't like to read finance articles, stop reading. Sorry. Because a lot of them will say, oh, you're this particular age, now you should not be taking risk. Complete nonsense. Whether you can take risk, whether you should take risk, depends a lot on what your current position is. So you could be a 60-year-old with children settled, or maybe you're a 60-year-old couple and you don't have kids, so obviously you are in a better position than somebody who is still paying for the children's education, etc. So maybe your ability to take risk, depends on many factors. It depends on your age, it depends on how well your children are settled, how much you're inheriting with your parents, and at 60 there's a good chance that your parents are alive, so maybe you've got some money from them, or you're going to spend money to look after them. So it depends on too many things, not just age. Don't think a 60-year-old can take more risk than a 70-year-old. Maybe 60-year-old and 70-year-old are equal because both may not have any current income. So maybe the 70-year-old can take more risk because he's got to worry for 20 years, whereas the 60-year-old has to worry for 30 years. I'm assuming both, we'll have to make some assumption that people die at the age of 90. Somebody could live till 95. So if your assumptions are wrong, you don't want to run out of money at 90 and say, oh my God, how am I going to live for the next few years, right? So you want your money to last a little longer than what you live. Especially if you don't have children, the chances are you might feel like, burning away all your money because you don't know if some nephew, niece, somebody else is going to benefit and you don't really care. So consider all these things while you're doing your risk profiling. Considering what you're going to inherit, considering what you want to give, consider that your children may or may not. If your children are very successful, that's a lot of stress off your head. Not that they will pay you, but at least they will not ask you for money. You will not need to support them, right? So remember all this while doing your retirement and tax planning. Understand that cash flow is more important than wealth. Understand that cash flow management, converting income into capital gain, is a far sensible thing to do. This is the third or fourth or fifth time I'm saying this, but please remember all this while planning your retirement cash flow. Retirement cash flow is more important than retirement assets. If you know how to manage your cash flow, 80% of your work is done, right? Thank you.